Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Key to the Pastcast, a Trumbull County Historical Society production. I am one of your hosts, Ryan McLennan, and with me,
Megan Reed.
Before we get started into this week's episode, as always, we'd like to shout out our sponsors for this podcast. It is
Ohio Humanities and the Community Foundation of the Mahoning Valley have generously sponsored this first season.
Thank you so very much for your support, and thanks for the listeners. So on this week's episode, we have Belinda Weiss, Museum Director at the National McKinley Birthplace Museum, to talk a little bit about McKinley's life, the museum, the Birthplace home, and a little bit about Niles. One of the things that I found super interesting about this is some of the stories that aren't really talked about McKinley's life.
Absolutely.
Right. His relationship with Ida, I thought was super interesting. Was there anything that stood out to you about the episode?
I think the thing about this episode, and maybe just about McKinley in general, that is super interesting to me as someone who's not from this area, is just everybody talks about McKinley being from here, right? He's everywhere in Northeast Ohio, from the monument in Canton to all of the pieces that bear his name in Niles. And he's not a president that we really know a whole lot about. You know, like he's one of those that usually just falls by the wayside. But he was president at a time that was so tumultuous, right? Mm-hmm. Like we're smack dab in the middle of the progressive era.
Right.
The Industrial Revolution
is really taken off in the United States at this time.
Right. He's one of the only presidents that was assassinated. Right. There was so much going on at the time. But, you know, I think most people, myself included, who don't know a whole lot about it, you know, we drive around, we see that name everywhere, but we really don't know what it means.
Yeah.
I also love this idea of the building, and Belinda goes into this a lot more during the interview, but the idea that such a well-known architect and a well-known industrialist, Joseph Butler, you know, really founded this museum and plopped it in Niles is such a gem in our community, and something that I think is in some ways underutilized by the community, right? But it's certainly something that has impacted people.
Yeah. I think one of the things that was like really interesting when we asked Belinda what was her favorite part about the museum is that she said, I get to go to work in this beautiful building. And as you were saying, we do in many ways sometimes take this thing that looks like it belongs in DC for granted. You know, you're driving in Niles and this beautiful museum and library pops up and you sort of just pass by it. And hopefully, if nothing else, what Belinda has to say and what this conversation sort of generates is a reattention to what we have in our own community.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Well, without further ado.
Yeah, without further ado, please welcome Belinda Weiss. Belinda Weiss earned her bachelor's and master's in history at Youngstown State University. She has been the museum director at the National McKinley Birthplace Museum since January 2022. In addition, she is an adjunct professor at Kent State University and has contributed to several historical anthologies for Slager Publishing. Belinda is an experienced presenter and has spoken for organizations within Trumbull County as well as Mahoning, Columbiana, Geauga, and Ashtabula counties. She currently resides in Campbell, Ohio, but has roots in Trumbull County. She is proud of being a graduate of Matthews High School and being on the board of directors for the Vienna Historical Society. Also, she is the president for the Niles Rotary Club for the years 2024 and 2025, and is working on both local and international projects for the upcoming year. She values her position at the McKinley because it creates so many opportunities to be involved in with the community.
Welcome, Belinda.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're absolutely thrilled to have you here. I think it's super interesting. You know, people drive through Niles and all of a sudden they go down the main street in Niles and there's this huge building that pops up, right?
Right.
It definitely stands out. And I was hoping we could start a little bit with you giving us some information about like how it came to be. Like, why is the Memorial Museum and Library in existence today?
Okay. The construction began in 1915, opened to the public in 1917. And we have one person that we could hold responsible for having this here in Niles, and that's Joseph Butler. Joseph Butler, he was a very good friend of William McKinley's. They met when they were about 7 years old, a little one-room schoolhouse that was situated on the grounds where you see the beautiful building you were just talking about. And that site was chosen for that reason, and also because it was close proximity to where McKinley was born, which his house is no longer there. We do have a replica home now that is there, that is run by the library, that people can also tour and visit.
Now, Joseph Butler, is there a connection there with the Butler Art Museum?
There sure is, yes. The Butler Art Museum was opened in 1919, so shortly after the National McKinley Birthplace Memorial Museum, which is quite a mouthful to say, but yes, it's that there is a distinct connection there, and actually the same architect was used at the Butler Art Museum as was at the Memorial Museum, McKim, Mead and White out in New York. So
it's a very prestigious firm.
It is, yes. They've done a lot, and that's one of the reasons why they were chosen. They did the renovations for the East and West Wing at the White House. They also did the admission office for Columbia University, so that they had a lot of prestigious projects in their pocket, which is why they were chosen.
Man, right in Niles, Ohio.
Right. I was gonna ask you, way to lead the witness there. That's pretty good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I have a question about the design of the building, because I think that's probably, besides it's like stunning, the marble, it's really pretty, but the design of it, how many iterations did it take to get to the one that they decided? Do you know that?
I am not sure. I mean, I know that they put it out there there was a nationwide competition basically to select the architect. So a number of firms, I believe there were like 6 to 8. I think they had narrowed it down then. From there, they had submitted their plans for like what they thought it should look like. But Butler was very integral in that process, though. He knew what he wanted to look like. And going back to something that Meg said, originally, driving down the street, you see this building. It looks like it does not belong there at all. It looks like it's just like kind of plucked up out of Washington D.C. and just set right there in the center of Niles. And so it doesn't really look like it belongs, but I think that was kind of what Butler was going for, was just something that just like really stood out, something that was going to capture people's interest.
Yeah, it certainly does. It's a beautiful building. It really is.
Can we talk about the statue of McKinley that's inside of it? Do you know anything about that statue?
The one that's in the center of the courtyard?
Yes.
Yes. Actually, that was designed by John Massey Rind, who was Carnegie's favorite sculptor. So not many of us could say that we have a favorite sculptor, but
no, I cannot. Ryan might be able to, actually.
I could, but I'm good.
I think we'd like to hear more about that, right?
Not that I could afford them, but it's fine.
Yeah, it's fair.
Yes, but yeah. So John Massey Rind was Carnegie's favorite sculptor, and Carnegie did have ties with Butler, of course, being both were involved in industry. So, but John Massey Rind deliberately chose the design that he had in the look of the McKinley statue, because it was really reflective of the time that we were going through. And if you think about our foreign policy prior to McKinley, it was the Monroe Doctrine was in place, so the idea of spheres of influence, so very much like isolated. Whereas then we move into the open door policy, where we were competing with those global powers such as England, France, Japan, Germany. And so that's kind of what Bryant had in mind, was this idea of this person who was steering us into sort of the next phase of the United States, basically, it being recognized more so as a global power.
So let's talk about McKinley.
Okay.
So I feel like the average American person, I would count myself as one of them before I took this job and learned a little bit more. It's not like George Washington or Abraham Lincoln, right? It's not one of our presidents that you would automatically be like, yes, I know what he did, right?
Right.
Can you give us a little bit more context in terms of like who McKinley was during his presidency?
Sure. And it's funny that you should say that, because most people that come in have that same thing, like, well, what did he do? Why should I know about him? And he definitely is a president who flies under the radar. Whenever he was first elected, 1896, I mean, the country was very divisive, very much like it is today. And McKinley he was a Republican, but I would say more so like be considered moderate in today's terms. So he was more progressive than what people think that he was. Prior to him becoming president, he was very much on board with the idea of women's rights, women voting, which a lot of people didn't know. Also for minority rights too. He and Ida funded college education for a lot of African Americans because they knew that they did not have the means to otherwise. So these are some of the things that he kind of brought with him. And so it's, as far as like what he's known for, one of the things would be what I just mentioned as far as that change in foreign policy. We do see that change in the United States. It's like moving from like just kind of being isolated and just this idea of manifest destiny expanding within our borders to acquiring territory outside of the United States, which also controversial. Spanish-American War, we acquired territory outside of the United States with that. Also the annexation of Hawaii, also controversial. But these are things that happened under McKinley's watch, and there were reasons for that too. He realized that there was a controversy surrounding that, but he also realized that if we didn't do something, we weren't going to be able to compete with these other countries, and we were very much afraid of being shut out. So he made the decision to do such things. But there's always going to be controversy with anything like that. So
I think that's a really good synopsis of his term as a president. Can you cite an interesting fact that people wouldn't know about McKinley, right? Like something that you'd be like, oh, that's interesting.
Okay, so something interesting about McKinley. I would say, so one of the things that's been said about McKinley, he was, a lot of the other guys in the government at the time said that he made them look bad. And the reason why they said this is because he was very devoted to his wife, Ida. And a lot of people, if you ask about Ida, the only thing that they know about her is that she had seizures and she didn't do anything as First Lady, which nothing could be further from the truth. McKinley and her kind of made it possible for her to be more involved. She would sit outside his office. She would listen in meetings that he had. So he did listen to a lot of things that she would say. And he made sure that she was able to still be present at things, even though she wasn't necessarily always well. So they broke protocol in a lot of cases. So it wasn't customary for the First Lady to sit next to the President. But he wanted her to be next to him, just in case she were to have a seizure. He could hold a napkin or something in front of her so that people weren't gawking at her. So he would do that. She would be able to sit instead of stand at a reception line, or hold flowers so she didn't have to shake hands so that it wouldn't offset her balance. So he did a lot of things like that, broke protocol to make sure that his wife was able to be there. So
that's super fascinating.
That's amazing. It's amazing.
The one in Niles happens, again, because of Butler.
Okay.
Butler is the one that said that there needed to be something to commemorate McKinley because of him being born in Niles. So it was really Butler that made this happen. So in 1910, he's the one that talked to the Niles Board of Trade. He's the one that went to Congress and secured this whole idea of there being something to dedicate to McKinley in Niles. It was Butler that put forth his own money at first, and then secured donations from wealthy industrialists, which we have the bronze busts that surround the statue of McKinley in the courtyard, as well as inside the museum and inside the library. All of them donated as well. But they did secure donations in other ways too. They sold the memorial book, which kind of detailed Butler's plan for the building and for what he wanted. They sold commemorative coins, and then also memberships to the Memorial Association, which was established in 1911. So, but he did this though just in honor of his friend. I mean, they were really good friends, and they remain lifelong friends. And one of the first things McKinley did when he was elected president was to send flowers to Butler's mother. He looked at her as a second mom, and so they were very close. So that is why it exists here in Niles.
Let's talk a little bit more in depth about McKinley's upbringing in Niles.
Okay.
Can you give us a little bit more information about his family and his early days? And then sort of also, do you think that being from Niles influenced him at all throughout his life?
I would say, okay, so his early life, he was just an ordinary student. His mother was very strict, and so that had a lot to do with him just being a very polite boy. A matter of fact, that was like one of the things that's the only thing that she really wanted from him. She goes, I just want him to be a polite boy. No one really expected him to do great things except for him. He thought he was going to be president, and everyone was like, "Yeah, okay, William, that's really cute," Just, but it's just even his teachers were like, "Oh yeah, he behaved. That's all that we really wanted from him." But he had something bigger in mind. But his upbringing though was just very typical. Just playing outside, ice skating, fishing, doing things like this. But by no means was it exceptional where he was like this exceptional student. Everyone's like, oh, he's going to do great things one day. Only William thought that. So, but a matter of fact, I said this is kind of related to that too. Whenever he met Ida, her father said that he was an investment. That she was the one with the money. He was working as a prosecuting attorney, making maybe about $1,000 a year. So today's money would be about $20,000. So not making a whole lot. So it wasn't the money that drew her to him. So it's which is kind of interesting to speak, to say those sort of things about our 25th president. But yes, it's that no one really thought that. But as far as Niles influencing him, maybe that would have been an influence. The fact that nobody was really expecting much of you, prove him wrong, and I think he certainly did that. So,
I mean, obviously, one of the sad but fascinating things about McKinley's life is how it ends, right?
Right.
Can we talk a little bit about what we know about his assassination?
Yes.
And ultimately, how his funeral is attended and everything that has to go along with that.
Sure. Yeah. Yes, and that's probably another question we get often is that some people come in and don't even know that he was assassinated. But yes, he was one of the 4 presidents that was. His assassin's name was Leon Czolgosz. Another thing, I'd be like, how do you pronounce that name? But Czolgosz, though, he was actually born here in the United States. His father was from Poland. His mother was from Germany. They had fallen on hard times, lost their jobs. Czolgosz himself, Leon had lost his job, and he blamed McKinley for that. Now, McKinley was known for being for the gold standard, being for the tariff, the high tariff. So he was seen as an elitist. So he was an obvious target. And there wasn't much help for immigrants at the time either. And so Czolgosz had targeted McKinley very early on. It wasn't the first attempt either. There was a couple times at a park in Stark County. He and Ida were there, and Leon shows up with this gun, and he's told, "You can't have a gun in the park. You got to get out of here." So he did. But that didn't stop him. Czolgosz he did become a member of the Anarchist Party, and even they said he was too radical for them. So, but he felt that this was his duty, and so whenever he went to Buffalo, it was for that reason. And there was a couple times in Buffalo too that he had it could have happened before it did, but it was stopped. But he was able to get very close to McKinley that day. Because security had their eyes on somebody else, Benjamin Parker. Benjamin Parker was a black man. He was there attending. He idolized McKinley, wanted to meet him, got the day off from work, wanted to meet the president. And security was watching him with suspicion. And oddly enough, it was Parker who wrestled Czolgosz to the ground after he shot McKinley and made sure that he was apprehended.
Wow.
And then to continue with that story, Ida made sure within the 6 years that she lived after McKinley that Parker and his family, they were able to receive housing as well as education for their kids. So she made it like that was kind of like her final thing to make sure he was seen as a hero for what he had done for her husband. So
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, wow.
I know that Ida, as you talked about, had seizures and some other health problems. I know that McKinley and Ida, they dealt with child loss.
Yes.
They had 2 children or 3?
They had 2 children.
Okay.
Yes.
They, as far as I understand, they didn't live very long.
No. Catherine died of typhoid fever at about 5-6 years old, and then little Ida was 6 months old. So yeah. And it was actually after the birth of Catherine that Ida started to have the seizure. She suffered nerve damage during the birth, and so that kind of prompted that, and just her having the seizures like later on. So,
wow.
Can we dive a little bit into the museum itself?
Sure.
So you are the director,
Yes.
which I'm sure means you wear many hats, to use the expression, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Curator, visitor services, education, all that stuff.
Yes.
Can you give us a little bit of a sense of what the museum's like today if people want to come and visit?
Sure. To go back to what you said about the many hats, I always tell everybody that I do everything from curate exhibits to plan events to change the toilet paper. So, which is true.
I say the same thing.
He does.
Megan does too. So
We all do, but
right.
That's part of it. You just.
Right.
But what you'll see today, and we have some exciting things coming up too. We have exhibits on the balcony level, which in chronological order, like from his early life, Civil War, which, by the way, he was the last president elected to serve in the Civil War, and which is kind of neat. We have the first election, the Spanish-American War, second election, and then also the assassination. So sort of like exhibits each one of those things. But I also have some other things, newer exhibits. One, just his dedication to the Civil War. It is him being part of the 23rd Ohio Volunteer Infantry, along with his mentor Rutherford Hayes. So I have that on the main floor. And we are looking to add on to our exhibits. I met with someone today about cases. We're having cases made to match the woodwork that's on the main floor. And the other thing then too is just just events that we have there. I mean, I do a lot of collaborations, including with both of you, and so just to bring events there, and it's just and I think that's all part of it, is just getting the word out there, like what we do. I mean, it's just when I started there in January of 2022, there wasn't much going on. There were days I sat there and there was not many people coming in. So just trying to get the word out there, just kind of reinventing the website. You can relate. You know what that's like. It's just to get people in the doors and get them interested. So what people can see is just like more exhibits dedicated to McKinley, more events to get people in the doors, and that's going to continue doing that. So
Belinda didn't say this, so I'm going to say it. You were my first meeting with another museum professional in Trumbull County.
I don't remember that. That's funny.
Right. And we talked about collaborations and trying to work together more, and it's come true for the most part, I think.
Yes.
Which is good.
Yeah, I think we made good on that.
Yeah,
on that,
I agree.
That meeting.
Yeah, I mean, you started in January. I started in end of February, March. So yeah.
And odd that you should say that, because I was just talking to my intern about that.
Yeah.
I was like, Ryan was one of the first people I talked to. I'm like, somebody wants to work with me. This is good. So,
I felt the same way. I just didn't say it, so we're good.
It's just like, yes.
Yeah.
Somebody wants to do something.
Right. But thank you for being so receptive.
Well, I could say the same thing. So.
Right. Can we talk a little bit more about Butler's life? I mean, he's a huge figure in our area.
Yes.
What are some, I don't want to say a brief synopsis, but a synopsis of his life? Obviously, we know about his friendship with McKinley.
Yes.
He grew up in Niles, but then what happens after that?
Kind of going back to he was born in 1840 in Mentor, Pennsylvania, and to an industrialist family. So he kind of was kind of thrust on him basically. But Butler, I think, took it to another level. I mean, he was an industrialist. He had all those relationships. He was fondly known as Uncle Joe among the industrialists, because he was just that kind of person, just friendly. Wasn't seen as being like ruthless or cutthroat or anything like that. And I think that his philanthropical work speaks to that. I mean, he had a lot of projects, such as the museum, the Butler Museum and the McKinley Museum, that showcases that. I mean, he wanted there to be something that was left after he was gone, because he said that any man of wealth should have something that they leave behind to the community. It's something to be remembered by. So it wasn't just about how much money you had, but like what you could give back to people. And I think that that's, one of the main things that he would want people to speak about him in regards today, is just, what he did to help, what he did to make a difference.
I think that's a good lesson for now.
Absolutely. I think so too.
Right. I
think so too.
Maybe that should be applied a little more often.
I agree.
Right.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
When you walk in every day, right, what's the one thing that you look for in the museum that you're like, oh, I can't believe I get to work with this, or I get to see,
like a favorite artifact?
Yeah, favorite artifact or favorite part of the building that you're like, wow, that's so cool.
That's kind of the obvious would be the McKinley Memorial that's in the courtyard. I mean, that's kind of a gimme. But the way that I come into work, though, I bypass the Niles Industrial Park. And so it's to go from that, and I know just like right up over the bridge, there's this beautiful building. So this is what I come into work every day seeing, is just this building that is just like, and I try to look at it from the eyes of the people seeing it for the first time, because I think sometimes we take that for granted if we get to see something every day. So I try to look at it from that point of view all the time, and just like you go from, and I mentioned the Niles Industrial Park just because it doesn't look like the museum should be where it's at, but it is just such a sight whenever you come over the bridge and you see it. And it just, I feel very fortunate to call that my office. Doesn't get much more awesome than that. So
that's really well said. A nice perspective too.
Interpreting presidential history.
Okay.
Right. I want to get into this a little bit without being political. So I feel like talking about presidents can be so sort of polarizing in some ways, right?
Yes.
Like we see that a lot in our world today.
Yes.
And any president that was assassinated, I think we can probably safely say, was in some ways a sort of controversial figure.
Right.
Do you find a tension in that in your work, or like how do you approach the idea of talking about presidents without being, I don't know, like on either side of the political fence, I guess is my question.
I approach that by looking at, I guess, historical facts, rather than delving into like my opinion or why that would matter. And when people come in, and a lot of people do come in because he was a Republican president, and so they kind of latch on to that. But I will mention to them about McKinley and like what he kind of brought to the table, that idea about being for minority rights, being for women's rights. So he was really much more progressive than what people thought. So there was more to him than just being Republican. Mm-hmm. And so I tried to point that out, like that side of him, rather than it just being about a one political party versus another political party. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, that makes sense. Well, I think it goes back to something we were talking about before we turned the mic on, which is that so many presidents are from Ohio, right? And like, yes.
She got the question she wanted.
I knew she was going to work it in there, right. So I knew.
But I'll give you a bone maybe, and like take a stab at it. And like, essentially to what you were just talking about, do you think there's something about Ohio being sort of ultimately American in some ways that has drawn people to Ohio presidents? Like the time when most of the Ohio presidents were coming up was like the height of this like progressive era, right? When there was so much industry booming,
Yes.
and so much of that was here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that there would certainly be a correlation with that. So, yeah, I mean,
It's just interesting that McKinley's background was very much, I think, what a lot of people would think of as sort of quintessentially American in some ways.
yeah. Yes, I mean, it was almost like he came from, not really having much money, not really much expected of him, and he was determined that he was going to do something, and he did. So it's a good thing for him, though, too, that he did have people in his corner. They saw that ambition, they saw those goals, and they saw someone who was able to achieve those. So in a lot of ways, I guess we have to credit both Ida and her father, because they saw that in him. I mean, her father, he said he has potential. So.
Did McKinley ever go back to Niles later in his life?
I can't say that he ever came back to Niles, but he never forgot where he came from. For every relationship that he ever formed, he maintained, and the relationship with Butler, case in point with that. There is actually a photo that we have of Butler and with all the school, the other boys in the school, and it's just so that those people meant something to McKinley. He never forgot about that. It just and he was very personable that way. And that's one thing that people would say about him, is that they always felt like they were a friend, like that never went away for him. So it's and I think that's important, though, too. It kind of shows that human side of someone who was president. So it just never forgot where he came from.
He wore a carnation.
He did, yes.
And living in the Carnation City of Lyons, Ohio, I have to ask this question. I obviously know what it means, but can you explain a little bit more about why he wore a carnation? Was it, once again, remembering sort of where he came from? Is that basically, in essence, what it was? Yes.
I mean, he just, he was known for his top hat and the carnation, the two things he always had. And it's just, then that became our state flower for that reason. So we have McKinley to go back to as far as why that's our state flower. But yes, that's,
Yeah. Very cool.
Is there anything about McKinley that you'd want to debunk?
Ooh, that's a good question.
As far as, probably the one thing that I would want to debunk is this idea of him being an elitist. I mean, because that's how he was seen, but that wasn't really him. I mean, the more you read about him, the more you see just his upbringing, his relationships. That was not him. McKinley was the person who was, he was the president of the debate team who was debating these sort of things as far as minorities having rights, women being able to vote. So these were the things that McKinley was really about. And so this idea of it just being more so about being, rich, being elitist, being for all big business, that wasn't him. So I think that's something that could be debunked.
So if people want to visit,
yes.
Okay, let's start from the beginning, because I think this can be a little confusing.
Yes.
If somebody Googles McKinley Museum, there's
Yes.
going to be a few that come up, right?
There's a few that come up. There's been more than one time that we get somebody that is looking for a program that is happening in Canton.
Yeah.
And they come to our place. And
It's a little bit further away.
It's a little bit further away, and they're probably not going to make it in
Nope.
time.
So the Presidential Library is in Canton.
Right.
Yes.
And memorial, right?
Yeah, there's the museum, and then of course the memorial there in Canton.
Mm-hmm.
Then of course there's the Birthplace Museum, which is where I'm at, just representative of his life in Niles and before his family moved away. And then just to further complicate things, we do have across the courtyard, which is the McKinley Library, which is where the museum/research center started off, and now that's a functioning public library. And then to further complicate things, we have the Birthplace house.
The replica.
The replica, yeah. So, yeah, McKinley's original home burned down in 1937. The replica home is actually run by the library, so which is which is all, they have different hours than us too. Yeah, so that can be a little bit confusing for people. So if you Google McKinley, they're like, well, what are we going to see here? I get a lot of phone calls about that. Like, what's there where you're at? What is the difference between you and Canton? What is it? What is this replica home? Like, what is this all about? So we do get a lot of questions about that. So, and it can be a little confusing.
Yeah. So stop down.
Mm-hmm. Yes, stop down. Come see the museum. Walk over to the library, check that out too, because there's some of the industrialists, the bust there within the library, and it's a really cool library, run very well. Definitely
Shout out Carrie Kibbe.
Yes. You got to. Yeah, she's great. And of course, go visit the replica home, and and there's no competition. Go to Canton too. Go see it all.
I think that does speak to sort of what you guys were talking about a little bit, is about the unique nature of McKinley, right? Is like very Ohio, right? Like multiple cities, multiple places claim some connection to him.
Yes.
Which makes him in some ways very unique to the presidents from Ohio, which is very cool. Confusing, but cool.
Confusing, but cool. Yes, there's Niles. He moved to Poland. Then, of course, there's Stark County. I mean, there's all these places that claim McKinley, and it's just, and there's place for all of us. So
that's a great note to end on.
That's a really wonderful note to end on.
Well, thank you, Belinda. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I was looking forward to doing this. I'm glad we talked about this for how long. We finally got to do it.
Let's just generously say 6 months.
Yeah, at least. Yes, at least. It's been a while. So.
Thank you very much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me.
Of course. Bye.
Bye.
Our object highlight for this episode is an object in our collection that was donated just a couple of years ago in 2022. And when we found out that this item existed, we all got real excited about it. It was donated by a local gentleman and collector, Jim McFarland, and it is a campaign cane that was popular in 1896 during the campaign of William McKinley. But what's particularly awesome about this cane is that it was manufactured by Will Winfield, who was a Warren inventor and the founder of the Winfield Manufacturing Company. Many will relate more to Taylor Winfield Manufacturing, which of course he was a part of too. And the cane is a very deep, dark color, almost black. And below the knob of the cane, like the tip part, the top part that you would hold on to, is a mouthpiece, which would actually be used as a horn. Like you could blow into it, which is crazy. And on the knob is the inscription, patriotism, protection, prosperity. So you can see some of the things that they were talking about during the campaign. So this was one of those early campaign gimmick kind of things, right? Where get the word out, make sure that people know who you are. I can't imagine politicians today giving out campaign canes. That just seems a little too far-fetched. But we're going to post the photo of it in the show notes, but you can also go onto our catalog it, and if you just type cane, it'll come up in the search history there. It's called Campaign Cane 1896. Yeah.
We'll also add some postcards, some historic postcards we have of the memorial in Niles, the museum in Niles, and some historic photos we have of McKinley's birthplace home. And with that, we'd like to say thank you so much for listening.
Absolutely.
And see you next time.
See you next time.